Ushio is an average high schooler who aspires to be the next Austrian painter. However, beneath the surface, he descends from a family of an ancient order of high-ranking samurai famous for battling evil and saving the world. Based on the stories he's heard from his father, the Earth was nearly destroyed 500 years ago because a legendary monster was on a rampage, slaughtering anyone in its sight. After several decades of the monster's reign of terror, one of Ushio's samurai ancestors used a mythical beast-slaying spear to impale the giant monster to the wall, successfully sealing it, but ended up dying in the process. However, after Ushio's dad, Shigeru, finishes his story, Ushio kicks him right in the jugular and warns him to either keep his lying mouth shut or just tell him where the mythical spear really is. At this, Shigeru suddenly starts packing his stuff, and Ushio asks him whether he's finally leaving to get milk. However, his father says he's going on a vacation away from Ushio's disgusting face, but asks him to dust the books in the shed before heading to school. After he leaves, Ushio goes to their temple's storehouse to air out the books like his father asked. However, while he's at it, he trips on a trapdoor in the middle of the room and pulls it open with his god-tier strength, only to fall into the dark, dusty cellar underneath. While he explores the strange place, a large monster named Tora suddenly appears with the beast's spear impaled on its right shoulder, and Ushio's soul nearly leaves his body when he sees it. Within seconds, Tora notices Ushio's fear, but since the beast's spear can only be removed by a human, he tells Ushio his sob story to get some sympathy and begs him to remove the spear so he can be free. Thankfully, Ushio's smarter than he looks, so before removing the spear, he asks Tora what he plans to do once he's free. As soon as Tora starts yapping about how he'll devour humanity, just like the old days, Ushio realizes he's wasting his time. So he kicks the spear to hurt Tora even more and leaves. On his way to school, he runs into blonde baddie Mayuko and his secret admirer, Asako, and walks with them to school. Getting there,
Oh shit, here we go again.
Ushio spends his entire day trying to forget the orange monster, but deep down, he knows that's impossible. After school, Ushio returns home to sleep, but before long, Asako and Mayuko show up at his house to collect a notebook they lent him earlier. While the three of them joke around, Ushio suddenly spots several invisible bugs and fish ghost monsters floating around them, and starts freaking out. He tries telling the girls, but when he notices that they can't see them, he realizes he's going crazy and quickly runs back to the cellar to figure out what's happening. There, Tora explains that the invisible ghost monsters he's seeing are called yokai, and that his evil miasma, which seeped out after the cellar was opened, attracted them there. If they don't do something about these monsters fast, then these monsters will materialize and destroy humanity before we get GTA 6. At first, Ushio doesn't believe him, but when he hears the girls screaming outside, he realizes that Tora isn't lying and decides to go help them. However, as he's about to leave, Tora suggests that he release him so they can work together to destroy the ghosts outside, and Ushio foolishly removes the beast's spear, hoping that Tora will keep his promise. Unfortunately, once the spear's out, Tora attacks Ushio and mocks him for being stupid enough to believe him. Enraged, Ushio instinctively slams the spear on the floor, which activates the power of the spiritual samurai who sealed Tora, and then he chases Tora out of the cellar. Scared for his life, Tora runs frantically and destroys several of the smaller yokai with his lightning powers, hoping to escape Ushio.
Why are you running?
However, when he realizes that he can't outrun Ushio,
Why am I running so slow?
he agrees to keep his promise and returns to the temple with him, only for them to realize that the other smaller monsters have all merged to become a giant purple worm yokai. With time running out, Ushio forces Tora to weaken the worm with an initial strike. Then, he delivers a fatal strike that destroys the giant worm, saving the temple. After that, he returns to his human form and discovers the horrible fate awaiting him as the Beast Spear's new wielder. Apparently, the Beast Spear works by converting its wielder's life force into power, which it uses to slaughter yokai monsters. So if Ushio wields it recklessly, he will turn into a monster. With this in mind, Ushio makes a contract with Tora to keep him close by and help him hunt down all the other yokai monsters attracted to his evil miasma. The following day, Tora breaks Ushio's TV after watching the terrible ending of Stranger Things Season 5, and although understandable, Ushio still beats his brains out to teach him a lesson. Afterward, he freshens up, grabs the beast's spear, which he wraps in a white cloth for concealment, and leaves for school. At school, Ushio runs into Asako and Mayuko, who also happen to be library committee members, and learns that they'll be getting some rare old materials from the old school's building to the new one, so he wishes them luck. Moments later, Mayuko, Asako, and a few other female students enter the old school building and discover a very creepy, very scary stone statue just sitting in the middle of a room. They get a little scared at first, but soon enough, they learn to ignore the statue and get on with doing their work. However, the moment they turn their backs on the statue's hollow eyes suddenly glow bright red, and before they know it, they get surrounded by a supernatural barrier. Around that same time, class starts, and Ushio gets very worried when he doesn't see his bittersweet sea partner, Asako, in there. As he tries to figure out where she is, the spear sends a high-pitched signal to his head, signaling that there's trouble. The school starts shaking violently, and Ushio, realizing that Asako might be in trouble, runs out of class to find her. On his way down, he spots a random girl in the stairwell, slowly turning to stone, and learns from Tora that Asako and the others might be at the mercy of the infamous yokai, the Rock Eater. With very little time left, he runs to the old building and searches everywhere for the girls, only to find nothing. About an hour later, the police and a news crew gather around the old building to investigate the incident. But while they just sit there and do nothing, Ushio learns from Tora that the Rock Eater yokai is currently trapping the girls in its spiritual space to feed on their fear and turn them into stone. Knowing this, he storms into the building again, ignoring police warnings, and eventually smashes into the Rock Eater's spiritual barrier with his spear. Inside, Ushio finds Asako, Mayuko, and the other girls already petrified, so he gets pissed at the Rock Eater and attacks it. Unfortunately, due to his cockiness, he fumbles so badly that the Rock Eater decides to torture him just for fun. Meanwhile, the rift Ushio opened in the barrier slowly starts closing up, and Tora, while leaving the Rock Eater's space, warns Ushio to get out of the barrier before it closes completely, or else he'll die. Hearing this, Ushio begs Tora to get the petrified girls out of the space for him, and Tora, shocked, asks him why he would risk his life for a bunch of beaches like the simp final boss. As he slowly turns to stone, Ushio says it's because he needs Asako for future plot sessions, and Tora ultimately decides to help him. However, after getting the girls out, Tora rushes back inside the spiritual space to help his buddy. But just then, the Rock Eater pins him to the ground. Just as the barrier is about to seal them in, Ushio somehow controls the beast spear and not only releases himself, but also uses it to keep the spiritual barrier open. Seeing this, Tora arms himself with his lightning powers, trash talks the Rock Eater, and vaporizes it in strong lightning that destroys the entire building. Even after getting hit by such power, the Rock Eater transforms into two large centipede yokai and threatens to wreak more havoc. To avoid that, Tora tells Ushio to spit on his spear and stab the centipede in the eye, so it'll die. Without hesitation, Ushio douses his spear with his natural lubricant and stabs both centipedes in the eye, destroying them. After that, he unpetrifies the girls and rides off into the sunset with Tora, leaving the news crew and police stunned. A few days later, Shigure returns from his vacation and continues warning Ushio about the evil orange monster that's trapped inside the cellar. Since his dad still doesn't know that he's released it yet, Ushio keeps up his good boy act all night and leaves home early for the art gallery with the girls. Getting there, he frolics all over the place and checks out the beautiful paintings of his favorite popular artist, the late Hanyu. However, when they all get to Hanyu's final painting, Ushio explains the ominous vibe he gets from the painting, and adds that Hanyu willed this final painting to his daughter, Reiko, right before he died. As they leave, Tora analyzes the painting for himself and realizes that Hanyu died cursing humans and transformed into an Oni. However, instead of telling Tora this, he keeps the information to himself and continues watching him. The following day, Ushio runs into his senior, Masaki, in school and gets beaten up for being a turd. While they're at it, a depressed baddie named Hanyu Reiko shows up and begs Masaki to take her out instead. However, when Ushio realizes that she's Hanyu's only daughter, he follows her home after school and begs her to model for him, so he can draw her. Reiko boldly refuses, claiming that her dead father's soul always murders anyone close to her. But just as Ushio's about to find out why, Truck Kun strikes again and nearly isekais Ushio and Tora. Luckily, Ushio spots it coming, so he splits the van in half just in time to save himself and Tora, and walks over to Asako's place. Getting there, Ushio asks Asako for some backstory about Reiko, and she tells him that ever since Reiko transferred to their school, all the simps who were looking to date her mysteriously died, Final Destination style. Saddened by this, Reiko attempted to end her life, but even after she was saved, she took the blame for the deaths, stayed away from people, and has been depressed ever since. Hearing this, Ushio gets even more interested in knowing Reiko, so when he runs into Masaki on his way home, he pesters him for more information about Reiko's backstory, and Masaki agrees to tell him. As it turns out, Reiko's tragedy all began the moment her deadbeat mother eloped with her then-boyfriend to get Noke. Her dad felt betrayed, and in his bitterness, he went crazy and died shortly after creating that last painting. Now, his spirit lives as an Oni inside the final painting in the house's stairwell, always ready to murder any guy who gets close to his daughter. The following day, while Ushio dances with Reiko in the yard during dance practice, a whirlwind surrounds them, and the Oni yokai attacks Ushio for getting too close to his daughter. Reiko begs the Oni to let Ushio go, but just as the Oni takes another swing, Tora shows up and defends his prey. Confused, the Oni tries attacking Tora, but after getting electrocuted by Tora's lightning, Ro dips. Afterward, Reiko runs back to her haunted house and climbs up to the roof to try her life again. Around that same time, Misaki and Ushio show up at the house, so when they spot her falling, they run upstairs and break her fall with the spear. Despite all that, the Oni still encourages her to fall, but after hearing all the warm things Misaki and Ushio had to say about life, Reiko decides to live again. Disappointed, the Oni yokai grabs Reiko and Misaki and rushes to the painting, so he can suck them in there and force them to live there with him forever. However, just as he's about to get in, he gets stuck, and Ushio slams the spear on it multiple times to clap it. When that doesn't work, the Oni grabs Ushio and slowly absorbs him into the painting for eternity. Tora, who's watching the entire thing, waits for Ushio to beg him for help, just like he did with the Rock Eater. But when Ushio doesn't call for help, Tora grows a pair and decides to save him. After pulling him and the others out of the painting, Tora gets into the painting's world, slashes the Oni in the face, and has Ushio destroy the entire painting with the beast spear. Afterward, Reiko's dad's real spirit thanks them for helping him, and disappears after reverting the final painting to its original form and color. With the Oni gone, Ushio finally gets Reiko to model for him and returns home with Tora. A few days later, an archaeologist working with a bunch of road construction workers finds a spiritual keystone that was used to seal off 5 dangerous yokai centuries ago at their site, and warns them to avoid touching the stone. However, since these men are just muscle and no brain, they destroy the keystone anyway and release all 5 ugly yokai monsters from their boxed prison. In no time, these 5 monsters tear the workers to shreds and leave the archaeologist alive to help them find Mikado, the woman who imprisoned them ages ago, to get revenge. The next day, Ushio finds out about the incident from the news and instantly blames Tora for going behind his back and unaliving those construction workers. Tora denies this, even providing solid proof about his whereabouts, but when Ushio still refuses to believe him, he flies to the city to actually capture and eat some humans. Moments later, Ushio walks to the crime scene and finds a policeman harassing the old archaeologist, who only wanted to tell his story. Feeling sorry for him, he rushes to help, but amid the hubbub, the man's picture book falls out of his pocket, and Ushio spots Mayuko's photo in there. Confused, he asks the man why he has Mayuko's picture, and the man tells him that the picture in his book belongs to Mikado, not Mayuko, which means Mayuko must be Mikado's doppelganger. Having said all that, the archaeologist then tells Ushio a story about how his grandpa saw Mikado seal the yokai about 2 centuries ago, and Ushio asks him what the yokai will do if they find a girl who looks like Mikado. When the man tells him that they'll devour her, Ushio realizes that Mayuko is cooked, so he immediately starts trying to contact her before it's too late. When Mayuko doesn't pick up, he calls Asako, learns that Mayuko is currently shopping at the mall alone, and drives to the mall with the archaeologist to find her. On the other side of town, Tora, who's been searching for the perfect human to eat all day, finally spots the pure and innocent Mayuko coming out of the mall and falls in love with her body instantly. Unfortunately, as he's about to eat her, the 5 yokai monsters pop out of an alleyway and attack Mayuko, thinking she was Mikado. However, before they also get to eat her, Ushio shows up with the beast spear, stops them, and gets Mayuko back inside the mall. Irritated, the yokai monsters slam him into a parked van and continue chasing Mayuko all over the mall till she gets into an elevator. Just when she thought she was safe, the monsters appear on the elevator's other side, break the glass protecting the elevator, and cause Mayuko to free fall to her death. Luckily for her, before she goes splat on the bare concrete, Tora catches her, places her on the building's roof, and calls dibs on her since he found her first. When one of the monsters lunges at Tora, Tora crushes it in one strike and challenges the others to come for him. At this point, Mayuko was already running, so to prevent her from slipping away, another yokai monster holds Tora down while the others chase after her. Amid the hubbub, Tora tries to tell the fools that Mikado is long dead, but when they still refuse to listen, he destroys the yokai holding him down and Pikachus the rest of the monsters with his lightning powers. Realizing that they can't beat Tora, the last remaining yokai dives to finish Mayuko off, but before that happens, Ushio shows up and destroys the yokai with the beast spear. With Mayuko saved, Ushio apologizes to Tora for misjudging him earlier, and Tora, after accepting the apology, finally gets to eat his first hamburger together with his buddy. A few weeks later, a popular ghost exorcist in Hong Kong, Hugh, destroys 2 yokai monsters, eating a human boy in an abandoned building, and takes a few minutes to remember the shadow of the yokai that destroyed his entire life 15 years ago. As he leaves the building, he suddenly spots Tora, who oddly resembles the yokai from his memories, in a news report and instantly decides to fly to Japan to hunt him. Meanwhile, Tora gets into a fight with Ushio after a failed sneak attack and slashes him in the face. After Ushio passes out from the pain, Tora tries to eat him, but when the beast spear automatically gets up to protect Ushio, he realizes that he's cooked, and so he dips like Batman to fight another day. The following morning, Hugh arrives in Japan to hunt his target, but while he scouts Ushio's neighborhood, he spots 2 hoodlums harassing a father and his little girl, and beats the life out of the fools. Luckily, just as he's about to clap them, Ushio, who was on his morning run, spots the fight and stops him in the nick of time. As they face each other, Hugh spots Tora hanging on Ushio's shoulder and instantly goes berserk. He tries every trick in his book to murder Ushio and Tora, but when he spots Ushio holding the beast spear, he realizes he might have misjudged Ushio for thinking he'd partner with Tora and apologizes. Although confused, Ushio forgets about Hugh's attack and interrogates him for some backstory. Upon revealing his identity, Hugh tells Ushio that he used to be a loving father and husband to his family until the shadowy yokai in his memories murdered them all one night and left 3 claw marks on his face. Ever since then, Hugh says he abandoned his old life and lives solely to hunt down and destroy that shadowy yokai. Now that he finally has another chance at vengeance, he begs Ushio to tell him if Tora is the same shadowy monster from that night. For a moment, Ushio considers telling the truth, which is that Tora is not the yokai he's looking for. But after remembering how quick Tora was to turn on him earlier, little bro forgets their friendship and sells Tora to the devil himself. Moments later, Hugh corners Tora in a walkway and battles the yokai for a whole day, while Ushio continues going to school in a bid to pretend like he didn't just sell out his friend. As the battle between Hugh and Tora rages on, Asako, who's noticed Ushio's odd behavior in school that day, follows him and talks some sense into his logic-resistant brain. After their conversation, Ushio realizes that he's been trying to run away from his problems all along. So when it gets dark, he returns to the walkway, stops Hugh from unaliving Tora, and tells him the whole truth. At first, Hugh doesn't believe Ushio because of the trouble he went through to fight Tora, but when Ushio tells him that Tora was locked up in his cellar for 500 years, Hugh loses his mind, beats Ushio up, and decides to continue the fight. At this point, Ushio knows Hugh's going crazy, so he whispers to Tora and tells him to run away while he still can. Confused, Tora asks him why he'd go so far for him, and Ushio says it's because he's done the same for him in the past. That being said, Hugh continues attacking, but the moment Ushio calls him a murderer, he realizes he's losing himself in his revenge. So he stops fighting and leaves Ushio after having a heartfelt conversation with him. A week later, Ushio and the girls all visit the beach to enjoy their summer vacation like normal people do. However, while they're at it, Ushio and Asako start bickering like a middle-aged couple, and Tora, who gets bored to death, decides to race to the middle of the sea to enjoy himself. Shortly after he leaves, Ushio finds a boy named Tatsuya pouring sand into their luggage and chases him down to discipline him. However, just as he's about to beat the little guy, Asako stops him and tries some gentle parenting on the boy. When that doesn't work, the trio visits Mayuko's grandpa's restaurant nearby. However, while they enjoy their food, they discover that Tatsuya lost his mother 2 years ago and has been pranking people to avoid making friends. Around that same time, Tora finally arrives at the middle of the sea, but just as he's about to continue his race, a sea-dweller yokai named Umezato pops out of the water, introduces himself as the yokai policeman of the sea, and begs Tora to help him destroy the Ayakashi yokai that's been rampaging the seas recently. Confused, Tora asks for some information about this Ayakashi yokai, and Umezato tells him that it's a large yokai monster, formed of a collection of the souls of humans trapped in Davy Jones's locker room. Satisfied with his response, Tora agrees to help Umezato, and so Umezato takes him to Ayakashi's region of the sea to fight it. There, the Ayakashi yokai surfaces to welcome its guests, and Tora immediately starts hitting it with his lightning attacks. After trying and failing to land a solid hit, Tora gets in between the monster's mouth to try to tear it apart, but unfortunately, he slips off the monster's lips and falls into the mouth. Umezato tries saving him, but since he knows that won't work, Tora tells him to go find Ushio on the beach nearby, and helps him get there with his lightning. As Umezato makes his way to the beach, Asako and Tatsuya grab a boat to go boat riding, but before they get far, a part of the Ayakashi monster attacks them and swallows them up. At that same moment, Ushio hears Umezato's voice and learns of Tora's situation, but as he searches all over for a solution. Mayuko tells him that Asako's in trouble. Without hesitation, Ushio gets on a call with Asako and finds out that both she and Tatsuya are currently trapped in the Ayakashi's belly. To prevent them from panicking, he tells Asako to keep the boy calm and wait for him. However, as he races down to the yokai, Tora finds Asako and Tatsuya surrounded by smaller yokai and saves them. Soon after, Ushio arrives at the Ayakashi outer body and tries to pierce and stab its rubbery skin with the beast spear. However, when that doesn't work, he gets into the monster's mouth and races down the throat to get to Asako and the boy. After saving them from the smaller yokai, Tora settles with Asako and listens to her tell Tatsuya about how Ushio, whose mom also died, used to be like him until he got saved by her father's pep talks. As she completes her story, the Ayakashi gets hungry and begins siphoning everything inside that belly into its digestive tract, including Asako and Tatsuya's boat. To keep them alive, Tora grabs both of them and attaches himself to the yokai's stomach walls, since his power is being drained. Thankfully, just before they all get sucked into the monster's intestine, Ushio shows up, sticks the beast spear into the Ayakashi's stomach wall, and continues trying to drag them all out of there. Amid all the hubbub, Asako passes out, but Ushio has Tatsuya hold onto her, so they don't lose her. Just then, Ushio's hand slips, and they all gravitate toward the digestive tract. Luckily for all of them, before they all get sucked in there, the beast spear automatically attacks the mini Ayakashi hiding in the tract, and Ushio, after recovering his spear, slashes the entire monster with his friend, Tora. In no time, the Ayakashi yokai gets destroyed, and all the souls it absorbed earlier finally go to heaven to rest in peace. After their ordeal, Ushio thanks Tora for helping his buddies and returns to the beach resort to relax. The next day, Tatsuya thanks Ushio and his friends and sees them off at the train station. But on the way back to the city, Ushio recalls the stuff Umezato told him earlier about his mother being alive and doing despicable things, and wonders if he's telling the truth. To confirm his suspicions, Ushio asks Shigure about his mother's whereabouts when he gets home that evening. But for some reason, Shigure avoids addressing the matter like he's avoiding alimony. As Ushio continues pestering him to spill the beans, Shigure accidentally finds Tora sitting near his son, keeps his calm, and still refuses to tell Ushio anything about his mom. Just then, an emergency exorcism call rings in, so Shigure answers it and leaves the house to attend to it. By nightfall, Shigure exorcises the emergency yokai, visits the villa of the Kohame sect, which houses the Buddhist elders he's serving under, and tells them that Ushio freed Tora and is now the wielder of the yokai-slaying beast spear. As you'd expect, the elders nearly drop a code brown in their pants when they hear this, but the moment they start planning preventive measures, Shigure begs them to give him a chance to test his son to see his competence. If things go well, they might not even need to slaughter Tora at all. If not, then Ushio and Tora will have to go. Hearing this, the overall leader of the Kohame Buddhist sect, Oyakume, permits Shigure to test his son. But before letting him go, she reminds him about Hakumen no Mono's impending awakening, and Shigure assures her that he didn't forget. After the meeting, a few Shigure haters move behind Oyakume's back and hire assassin monks to ensure Shigure, his son, and Tora are put in their place for good. When Shigure returns home, he finds Ushio thanking the beast spear for saving him from Tora all this time, and gets disappointed. Knowing fully well that the beast spear exists only to slaughter yokai, Shigure beats the nicks out of his son for glazing it too much and keeps the spear away from him. After dinner, Ushio asks his dad about his mother one more time, and Shigure gives him 1.2 million yen to take a trip to Hokkaido to see his uncle so he can find out more about his mother and the despicable things she's doing. After Ushio collects the cash, Shigure changes to his official clothes, introduces himself as a Buddhist mystic who travels and seals yokai, tells Tora that he's been ordered to execute him, and then challenges Tora to a duel in their backyard. Ushio watches in shock as his father, whom he thought was a good-for-nothing, takes on a strong yokai like Tora and actually matches strength. However, when things start getting very dangerous for both of them, he gets in between them to try to stop the fight, but they ignore him. Left with no other choice, Ushio grabs the beast spear, transforms into the samurai from 500 years ago, and forcefully stops the fight. After seeing his son handle the beast spear perfectly, Shigure drops the act and analyzes the sincerity of the relationship between Ushio and Tora so far. Upon realizing that Ushio and Tora are not threats to society, Shigure screams at the rogue Buddhist monks spying on them from the pillars and tells them that instead of sealing Tora like he's evil, they should let him fight beside Ushio, the current wielder of the beast spear. When the elders refuse to believe him, Shigure tells them about Hakumen no Mono, which piques Ushio's curiosity, and gives Ushio a chance to leave to find his mother, while he holds these stupid priests off. Thankfully, Ushio's not a coward, so when the elder priests attack his father, he remains standing and fights alongside him. Soon, the elders activate their powers, capture Shigure, and knock Ushio out. However, right before they run off with the beast spear, Tora decides to work with Shigure, and together, they beat down all the rogue monks. After the battle, Ushio falls asleep, sleep, and Shigure learns more about Tora's relationship with Ushio. The moment Ushio wakes up, Shigure tells him to take the trip to Hokkaido and assures him that he'll be fine, so the following morning, Ushio says his goodbyes to his old man and leaves for the airport. Getting there, Ushio waits for departure in the lobby and overhears a Safety Defense Air Force pilot named Atsuzawa talking to a deceased pilot's daughter, Yu, about the plane crash that took out her father. While Yu believes Atsuzawa murdered her father, seeing as they were both flying the same route that day, Atsuzawa claims that Yu's father's plane crashed because a monster attacked it mid-air. Yu still refuses to believe this, but when Ushio hears Atsuzawa talk about a monster, he asks Tora if there's a chance that a rogue yokai caused the plane crash. Tora tells him that he knows of a sky-dweller yokai named Fusuma who occasionally comes down to the ground to devour humans, and then adds that although Fusuma's a pain to defeat, his only weaknesses are blackened teeth and lots of fire. Knowing this, Ushio boards the plane and makes sure to sit near Yu so he can find out more about her dad. After takeoff, he introduces himself, asks Yu to tell him what's bothering her, and learns that Yu's deceased father was the captain of the plane that crashed after a near miss with Atsu's plane. Shortly after their conversation, Yu falls asleep, and Atsuzawa takes a seat beside Ushio to chat. After the niceties, Atsuzawa narrates the terrifying experience he had on the night Yu's father's plane crashed. Apparently, seconds after he spotted the green slender monster wrap itself around the deceased pilot's plane, he did his best to destroy it, but unfortunately, the monster had already destroyed the plane's engines. As he continues narrating to Ushio, the atmosphere around the plane suddenly turns green, and Atsuzawa gets the same sensation he got on the night the crash happened. Within seconds, Fusuma latches himself to the plane, takes out the pilots, and lets the plane dive down to its death, throwing the entire plane into chaos. With time running out, Atsuzawa mans the cockpit, and Ushio summons the beast spear from the luggage compartment. Then, he instructs Tora to phase through the plane walls to get outside and blow Fusuma away, and Tora eventually had no choice but to oblige, especially after Ushio exposed his invisibility to the other passengers. Once the timing is right, he phases through the plane wall to get on the back of the plane and helps Atsuzawa gain control over the plane. As Atsuzawa levels the plane, Yu, who saw everything unfold, finally realizes that Atsuzawa was telling the truth all along, so she calls Ushio and apologizes for being a hater. As he butters her up with sweet words, Tora fights Fusuma to keep him busy, and Atsuzawa tries calling the Self-Defense Forces control tower to inform them of the danger. However, since Fusuma's a yokai that's invisible to human radar systems, the control tower refuses to send aid, meaning Atsu's plane is done for. Thankfully, just before they lose hope, Tora pops up outside the cockpit's windshield with an attack plan and tells Ushio to stab the beast's spear through the plane's ceiling on his signal so that they can damage Fusuma unawares. Since the beast spear is designed to only slay yokai, Ushio actually sees the genius in Tora's plans. So once the time is right, he gets into his samurai mode and waits inside the plane for Tora's signal. By the time Tora holds Fusuma and gives the signal, Ushio and Yu stab right through the plane's wall and end up damaging Fusuma. In the aftermath, the control tower finally spots Fusuma's blood on the radar and sends fighter jets to take it out. When the fighter jets get to the plane, Atsuzawa tells them to fire a missile at Fusuma, but since he's still attached to the plane, the fighter jets refuse to do that. Left with no other choice, Ushio tells Tora to take him to the back of the plane so that he can cut off Fusuma's limbs and force it away from the plane. Initially, Yu and Atsuzawa refuse to let him sacrifice himself just like that, but after much persuasion, they all agree to get him up there. Soon after getting on the plane's back, Ushio and Tora work together and attack Fusuma till they break all his limbs. As soon as Fusuma's off the plane, the jets bomb him with an incendiary missile, and Fusuma dies seconds later. After their ordeal, Atsuzawa tries to make an emergency landing, but when they all realize that the plane's landing gear has failed, Ushio has Tora literally carry the entire plane to the nearest airport. After successfully landing the plane, Ushio says his goodbyes to Atsuzawa and Yu and leaves for their next adventure. A few nights later, two wolf yokai monsters, Reishin and Kagari, chase a third wolf yokai named Juro through the forest, all while begging him to stop whatever he's planning to do to the humans. Juro refuses to stop for anybody, so when he gets to the expressway, he causes a ghastly accident and eventually escapes from his pursuers. Realizing that he's already gone, Reishin and Kagari decide to meet the wielder of the beast's spear, Ushio, and see if he'll be able to help them stop Juro. So, the following morning, they shapeshift into their human forms, track Ushio into the town near the forest, get his attention, and then take him to a cabin deep in the forest to talk. Getting there, they introduce themselves as peaceful Kamitachi wolf yokai and beg him to help them slaughter their brother, Juro, who's been going on a murder spree recently. Initially, Ushio refuses to help them, but when he sees the remains of the villagers Juro's already slaughtered, he stays back to discuss with Reishin alone and leaves Kagari and Tora outside to fight each other like they're Gen Z siblings. Moments later, as Reishin and Ushio's conversation continues, Kagari acts like a total jerk to Tora, thinking he was just another weakling yokai, and escalates their argument to start a fight. Naturally, Tora welcomes the fight, but right before it happens, he senses a strong presence nearby and tells Kagari to stop. Being the brain-dead idiot, Kagari continues fighting and only stops after slicing his left forearm off. Within seconds, Juro shows up in his human form and goes berserk when he spots the infamous beast spear in Ushio's hand. To stop the impending disaster, Ushio takes on his samurai mode and attacks Juro, who's already in his Kamaitachi form, but unfortunately, he gets seriously wounded in the battle. Luckily for him, as Juro is about to murder him, Tora impales his chest with his severed arm, and Juro flies away. After the battle, Tora finds Ushio passed out from his wounds, so he lets Kagari and Reishin treat him with their special medicine. When Ushio wakes up, he finds Tora's severed arm littered on the floor and instantly develops a mental blue screen. Nevertheless, he reattaches the forearm without fail and heads straight to the nearest construction site to track Juro down. Moments later, when they finally get to Juro, Kagari tries talking him out of his lust for human blood, but when that doesn't work, Ushio slashes his chest. Enraged, Juro cuts the cliff above all their heads and causes a landslide with the sole intention of crushing them. However, just when he thought he'd won, he spots Reishin and Kagari pinned down by a crushed vehicle, and Ushio and Tora desperately trying to hold up a massive boulder so they all don't get crushed. Just then, Ushio notices gasoline leaking from the crushed vehicle, so he tells Tora to try lifting the vehicle so Reishin and Kagari can be saved before it blows up. Juro sees this and continues rambling nonsense, but when Ushio tells him to murder him instead if he hates humans that much, he calms down and rethinks his decision a bit. After yet another pep talk from Ushio, with a tincture of crocodile tears, Juro slowly starts getting a change of heart. Unfortunately, as he's about to help them, the construction workers on shift show up and harass him. Ushio tries getting them to back off, but one of the idiots drops his cigarette in the gasoline leak and ignites it. As the fire slowly burns towards the vehicle, Ushio realizes that they need more hands to pull the vehicle up, so they call out to some of the sensible workers to help them out, and to their surprise, a bunch of guys show up. Seconds later, they manage to get Reishin and Kagari out just before the truck explodes, but even after getting a second chance at life, Juro, who is touched by the good human Samaritans, realizes that he doesn't deserve it. So when Ushio lets his guard down, he attacks him and forces Ushio to stab the beast's spear right through him. Confused, Ushio asks him why he would sacrifice himself just like that. Long story short, Juro says it's because Ushio apologized on behalf of the humans for being wicked, and then disappears forever. The following day, the rogue Buddhist elders find out from their monks that their assassination attempt on Shigure and Ushio failed. As they plan their next move, Oyakume's assistant, Nejiro, walks into the room and orders them, on Oyakume's behalf, to observe Ushio as the next beast spear wielder. Meanwhile, Ushio and Tora chill out at Reishin and Kagiri's hot springs to cool off and heal from their previous day wounds. However, as they scream at each other, Ushio hears a girl singing nearby, so he swims over to the other side and finds a sick-looking silver-haired baddie named Saya, who looks sick, singing beautifully. He listens to her sing for some time, but when Tora shows up to distract him again, little bro immediately realizes that he's a peeping Tom and screams. Almost instantly, Saya spots him looking, and so she runs back home, scared that her sacred purity has been tainted by Ushio's lustful eyes. Once she's home, her father, Teiki, and her grumpy grandmother scold her for staying outside late, especially since her frail health doesn't permit her to live such a life. Afterward, they take her to a special room laced with weird spiritual barriers and leave her there, so Saya can comfort the family's deity living there. Saya tries playing with the deity as usual, but this time around, when the deity smells Ushio and Tora's scents on her clothes, she tells Saya to bring them there, so they can free her. Moments later, Saya wanders outside her father's villa to look for Ushio and faints somewhere on the road. Luckily, before she gets in an accident, Ushio saves her and takes her back to her father's villa before he throws a fit. However, when they arrive at the villa, Teikei gets really angry and talks trash about Saya's sickness without even considering Ushio sitting next to her. As you'd expect, Ushio doesn't take those insults lying down, so he gets up and confronts Takei and his pathetic mother for being such inconsolable dimwits. Thinking Ushio was just another pushover, Takei considers paying him to shut up, but when he spots the concealed beast spear sitting next to him, he grants Saya 30 more minutes with him and leaves. Minutes later, Saya takes Ushio and Tora to the deity's special room, but on the way there, she narrates the history behind her mother's bloodline's sickly and frail nature. Apparently, her mother was meant to be the bridge between yokai and humans, but unfortunately, after her father married her, he locked her up in the villa and forced her to comfort the powerful god that his ancestors sealed just to protect the family's wealth. Now that she's taking on her mother's duties, Saya opens the door to the room and leads Ushio and Tora into the room. After the niceties, the deity, Omimaru, introduces herself to the duo and asks Ushio to break the barrier keeping her sealed inside that room so she can be free. Around that same time, Takei recalls the moment Omimaru told his younger self a prophecy about her getting saved by a boy with a spear and realizes that Ushio must be that guy. As he storms towards the special room, Omimaru continues telling Ushio to break the spiritual barrier with the beast spear, but Tora warns that she might be blasted to bits. Well, since she's already seen enough of life, Omimaru makes peace with dying for the sake of the other white-haired baddies, but Saya does her best to convince her to stay. Just then, Takei storms right through the room door and attacks Ushio. After Ushio blocks his first attack, the stupid old man starts complaining about all the wealth his family has been able to acquire after sealing Omimaru for 200 years. He urges Ushio not to release her just yet, but since Ushio doesn't tolerate selfish dudes, he ignores the man's ramblings and continues fighting him. While he's at it, Tora tries splitting the barrier apart, but unfortunately, only the beast spear and Saya can open it. With this in mind, Ushio gets closer to the barrier to break it, but Saya blocks him and tries to convince him not to destroy the barrier. Around that time, Takei and his ugly mother start supporting Saya, so they don't rescue Omimaru. However, just when they thought they'd won, Omimaru speaks some sense into Saya's head, and Saya finally changes her mind. Once she permits Ushio to do the deed, Ushio destroys the seal, which releases a huge outburst of energy, and the entire house explodes. In all the hubbub, Tora protects Omimaru from the blast and watches her ascend to heaven as soon as the mission is finished. Once the dust settles, Takei's family returns to poverty, and Ushio and Tora leave right after saying goodbye to their new buddy Saya. The following morning, Mayuko checks out a Chinese antique mirror that her father bought earlier and suddenly spots the mirror vibrating subtly. She gets a little scared, but before anything supernatural happens again, Asako shows up and walks with her to school, while her parents leave the house for their husband and wife trip to Europe. On the way to school, Mayuko spots Asako sighing and teases her for missing Ushio. Ever since Ushio left for Hokkaido, he's been absent from school, and his brain-dead dad never even reported the situation to anybody there. So, at the time, Asako and the others didn't even know what was going on with Ushio. At school, Asako spends the whole day sighing and worrying profusely about Ushio. When her classmates catch on, she denies Ushio and nearly murders anyone teasing her about her love-hate relationship with Ushio. Eventually, Ushio's absence gets to everyone in class, so to find out what's really going on, Mayuko and Asako visit Ushio's house after school. There, Shigure tells them about Ushio's trip to Hokkaido, and Asako gets very pissed at the poor guy for leaving her in the dark. By nightfall, Ushio walks out of the Kamaitachi forest cabin after dinner and looks into a weird pool of water under the full moon. Within seconds, the water glows golden yellow, and Ushio spots Asako in real time, screaming Mayuko's name as if something bad had happened to her. This gets him very scared, as he runs back to the cabin and asks Reishin and Kajiri if there's a way to hear the voices of the people he just saw in the water mirror. To help him out, Reishin and Kajiri take him to an elderly water mirror expert yokai named Unga, deep in the Windy Mountains, to learn more. Soon after summoning him, Unga shows Ushio and the others a mirror recording of everything that happened right before Mayuko's disappearance. Apparently, after the girls came back from school, Mayuko noticed that the mirror had turned itself towards them. This was weird to her at first, but since it's just an old mirror, she ignored it and continued enjoying her night with Asako. Later on, while Asako reminisces over a memory where Ushio risked his life to help save her paper project from a rabid dog in the past, the evil yokai living inside the mirror pops out with its big, ugly head and swallows Mayuko before returning to its mirror prison. At that point, Unga stops the recording and tells Ushio that Kiyoma is the name of the mirror yokai that abducted Mayuko. Enraged, Ushio asks the elderly yokai how he can save Mayuko, and he tells Ushio that he'll send them back to Tokyo using his mirror portal. But then again, Ushio has to defeat Kiyoma before Unga's water gets cold, or else he'll be trapped there forever. Knowing this, Ushio and Tora enter the portal, arrive at Mayuko's house, and ask Asako about the incident. At the time, Asako doesn't recognize Ushio because of his long hair, but since she's met Tora in the Ayakashi's belly before, she tells Ushio about Mayuko anyway and follows him into the evil yokai's mirror world. Moments later, the trio arrives at Kiyoma's mirror world and finds him trying to fit his 4-inch sausage in Mayuko. When Kiyoma spots them, he sends mini versions of himself to stop Ushio and Tora, but Tora destroys them and gets Ushio close enough to land a fatal hit on the disgusting yokai. Within seconds of getting hit, Kiyoma dies, and Ushio and Tora manage to return to the real world with Asako and Mayuko. After placing them on the floor of Mayuko's house, he gives them all one last look and returns to Unga's cave. The next day, an entire army of evil yokai monsters meets in the spiritual realm to rant and discuss Ushio's tyranny over them ever since he became the beast spear wielder. After establishing the fact that Ushio is a danger to all yokai, they curse his mother and move forward with their plans on attacking him when he gets to Tono. As their attack plan progresses, Tora settles his beef with Kajiri. Ushio says his goodbyes to the Kamaitachi siblings, and they both ride the bus to Tono Station. However, before they get far, the yokai army throws the bus off the road, causing a ghastly accident, and chases Ushio and Tora deep into the woods. Ushio quickly transforms into his samurai form and works together with Tora to slaughter as many yokai as he can, but unfortunately, even that isn't enough, because more yokai monsters show up and pin Ushio down. Luckily, as they're about to eat him, the beast spear reverberates strongly, destroys the yokai pinning Ushio down, and flies him to a lake further inside the forest. Seeing this, Tora tries to follow him, but just then, his long-term friend, a giant horned yokai named Hitotsuki, blocks his path and starts trash-talking him for being in cahoots with the beast spear wielder. Tora does his best to convince Hitotsuki that it's not that deep, but when Hitotsuki still refuses to believe him, he moves on to ask his buddy why the yokai are after Ushio. As Hitotsuki explains things to Tora, Ushio arrives at the lake and meets with a peaceful Kappa yokai living there. After the niceties, the Kappa yokai heals Ushio's wounds, and Ushio narrates everything that's happened to him so far. At the time, Ushio thought the yokai monsters were attacking him because he slaughtered too many of their kind, but the Kappa yokai assures him that the yokai attacked him because of his mother's sin. Hearing this, Ushio urges the yokai to tell him about his mother's sin, and the Kappa begins his narration from the very beginning. It all began 1,000 years ago, when an incredibly strong and foreign yokai monster named Hakumen no Mano came from China to Japan to destroy all the yokai living there and wreak havoc on the humans. By the time the Japanese yokai were aware of the threat, they joined forces and fought Hakumen no Mano for years. Hakumen put up a good fight, but when the humans found out about its existence, it retreated temporarily to heal and recharge for yet another fated battle with the Japanese yokai. As time passed by, the Japanese yokai, scared of Hakumen's return, tracked the monster down to a lake to defeat it before it woke up. But just as Kappa is about to narrate Ushio's mother's involvement in the story, the beast spear reverberates again, signaling that yokai are nearby, and Ushio leaves the lake for the nearest village. Meanwhile, Saya, Amamaru, Reishin, and Kagiri, who are currently around the area of the bus accident, all notice the massive malice filling the air and realize that something's wrong. Not long after, a group of yokai approaches Reishin and Kagiri and asks for their cooperation in bringing down Ushio. However, since they've sworn their lives to protect Ushio, the siblings slaughter them all and rush to warn Ushio of the impending danger. Elsewhere, Hitotsuki tells Tora about all the things that happened after their battle with Hakumen. Apparently, when they got to the lake where the monster sleeps, they found an absolute defense barrier cast by Ushio's mother to protect the monster, and realized the hard way that they can't break the barrier, no matter what they do. At that point in the story, a confused Tora asks Hitotsuki if it's realistically possible that the woman from 1,000 years ago is still alive to be Ushio's mother, but instead of answering the question, Hitotsuki continues pestering Tora to reveal his true intentions for Ushio. To avoid coming off as a traitor, Tora betrays Ushio by telling Hitotsuki to do whatever he wants with Ushio, and so Hitotsuki happily leaves to hunt him. A few hours later, Ushio spots a weird old man walking alone in the woods as he fights the yokai chasing after him, so to avoid adding to the death count, he pauses his battle, piggybacks the old man, and continues running toward the village. Getting there, Ushio and the old man stop at a bakery and enjoy a quick snack for a few minutes. After watching Ushio stuff his face like a pig, the old man asks him about his long hair and the spear, and Ushio spends the next hour telling him the entire truth, not forgetting to mention the pain he always feels each time he has to murder a yokai for the greater good. After that, Ushio and the old man walk outside the shop, But as they're about to leave, the yokai army arrives at the village and attacks them. To avoid causing another bloodbath in the village, Ushio lures the yokai army to the village's outskirts and fights as many as he can to stay alive. Within minutes, he runs out of power and collapses, but as the yokai monsters are about to end him, Reishin and Kaguri show up and slaughter a few of them. Not long after, Hitatsuki joins the battle to make things harder for Ushio and the Kamitachi siblings. However, as he continues fighting them, Tora starts feeling like trash for selling his soul and betraying Ushio. After spending a few minutes thinking about the memories he and Ushio have shared so far, he ultimately decides to stop being a coward and redeem his dignity. With this in mind, Tora rushes to Ushio's location, arrives just as Reishin and Kaguri are about to sacrifice themselves to save Ushio, and destroys the yokai surrounding them with his lightning. Afterward, he flies them all to a place he thinks is safe, but immediately they land, a thick mist covers the entire area and transports Ushio to a mansion in the spirit realm. There, an elderly voice directs him to a special room, and he finds Omomaru, Saya's deity, sitting beside an old man who calls himself the leader of the mountain yokai. After the niceties, Ushio asks the yokai leader why he's being attacked by the yokai, and the yokai leader says it's because his mom is currently the one protecting Hakumen no Mono's resting place with the barrier. To help Ushio understand better, the yokai leader likens Hakumen's form to that of a beast with 9 tails and narrates the terrible memories every yokai in Japan, including Tora, has had fighting it. Although Ushio's mother wasn't the one who created the barrier, the yokai leader tells Ushio that she comes from the same bloodline as the woman who created it 1,000 years ago, and is the third person to still maintain that barrier to this very day. That being said, Ushio asks the man why his mother is going so far to protect Hakumen, but the man says that he doesn't know that yet. However, to find out, the man promises to stop all the yokai attacks on Ushio, so that he can go meet his mother wherever she is and ask her for himself. With that being said, the yokai leader reveals himself as the old man Ushio helped escape the forest the other day, and then ends the meeting. Seconds later, Ushio follows the yokai leader outside the mansion and finds him trying to get Hitotsuki to stop attacking Tora and the others. After much back and forth, with Hitotsuki refusing to back down, the yokai leader ultimately decides to settle the whole thing with a duel between Hitotsuki and Tora. If Tora wins the duel, then Hitotsuki backs down, but if Hitotsuki wins, then he gets to do whatever he wants. With the stage set, Hitotsuki and Tora face each other in a deadly mortal combat. Hitotsuki gets the upper hand at the beginning of the fight, even managing to impale Tora on the chest, but once Tora gets his footing, he bathes Hitotsuki in fire, electrocutes him with lightning, and pounds his brain cells to mush. Within minutes, the duel ends in Tora's victory, and the old man sees Ushio and Tora off, as they begin the next phase of their journey. A few days later, as Ushio and Tora arrive in Hokkaido, Hakumen, who's currently chilling in his watery crib, senses the beast spear getting closer, so he sends hundreds of his sus-looking mini yokai soldiers to recover it. As the monsters begin tracking the beast spear, Ushio and Tora get lost while trying to find an inn in the foggy Hokkaido night. However, the moment they try retracing their steps, one of Hakumen's monsters spots the beast spear and attacks them to destroy it. Ushio instantly gets ready for battle, but before they even get to touch the monster, a weird uptight baddie named Hinoa shows up and destroys the yokai easily. Afterward, she introduces herself as one of the 4 people trained by the Kohame sect to wield the beast spear and demands that Ushio hand over the beast spear to her. When Ushio refuses, she resets his brain cells with a nasty slap and starts blaming all the tragedies that have happened because of the beast spear, the Fusuma incident, and even Jiro's death, amongst others, all on his terrible training and martial arts skills. Ushio clearly knows the beach is just jealous, seeing as she trained her whole life to wield the spear. But after hearing just how many lives would have been saved if he knew how to wield the beast spear better, he becomes devastated and eventually gives her the spear. After acquiring the spear, Hinoa sucker punches Ushio in the belly and runs away after spotting several other yokai monsters coming for her. When he gets back up, Ushio considers backing out, but since he's the kind of guy who always wants all the smoke, he decides he's gonna follow Hinoa and see things through. Moments later, Hinoa runs into a disgusting, ugly yokai monster up front and starts yapping all sorts of nonsense to activate the spear's power. When the spear refuses to heed her beckons, the yokai attacks her and wraps its microscopic white monsters around the spear to destroy it. Luckily for her, before they squeeze out her love juice, Ushio grabs the spear from behind, transforms into his samurai form with the long hair, and charges forward to destroy the entire monster. After a few minutes of fighting, Ushio throws the spear toward Hinoa to save her and gets captured. However, as the monster is about to harm him, Tora releases him from the monster's hold, and Ushio ends the battle by cutting off the monster's head. In the aftermath, Ushio tries to strike up a conversation with Hinoa, but since she's too embarrassed, she acknowledges him as the wielder of the beast spear and leaves in shame and disgrace. The following morning, as Ushio and Tora fight each other as usual, a handsome, blonde biker dude named Nagari shows up with his bike and starts getting weird with Ushio. To avoid being rude, Ushio politely leaves him and continues walking to the bus station. However, as they approach the place, several dozen little yokai monsters possess the bus Ushio's taking to his uncle's place, and Tora, after noticing Nagari staring at him, leaves Ushio to find out who he is. When they meet face to face, Nagari introduces himself properly as another one of the candidates trained to wield the beast spear and starts expressing his interest in fighting Tora. As a fellow brute, Tora welcomes a duel with the guy and fights him, but unfortunately, all his attacks fail to defeat Nagare. Within seconds of fighting, Nagare pins all of Tora's limbs down with his magically enhanced wooden stakes and demands to know why Tora hasn't slaughtered Ushio yet. Hearing this, Tora refuses to talk, but when Nagare starts yapping about his entire 2,000-year life history, Tora rips off his limbs from the stakes and continues fighting until he eventually takes Nagare down. With the battle over, he reattaches his limbs, tells Nagare why he hasn't murdered Ushio yet, which is that Ushio never makes him bored, and leaves to find Ushio, whose bus had already left. While Nagare joins him to track the bus, Hakumen's yokai monsters attack Ushio's bus driver. Ushio notices this, especially after the beast spear reverberates in the sight of the danger, but even after saving the driver from certain death, the man still passes out. With no one available to drive the bus, it skids off its lane and causes all the passengers to panic. Amid all the chaos, Ushio stays calm and tries to stop the bus, but the crazy yokai monsters make it much harder for him to do so. Just as he's about to give up, Nagare and Tora catch up to the speeding bus and urge Ushio to join them so they can abandon the rest of the passengers. As a guy with a conscience, Ushio refuses to do that, so Nagare comes up with another plan and starts by having Ushio gather the passengers at the center of the bus. Once that's done, he blasts open the front and back panes of the bus and has Tora carefully suspend all the passengers midair in a cloud of his miasma. Afterwards, he then creates a rectangular spiritual barrier with his wooden stakes right in the middle of the road and ultimately catches all the passengers from the bus. Upon saving the passengers, Nagare turns to Ushio, who's currently being held down by the annoying yokai monsters, and tells him to stop the bus. Just then, he spots Ushio letting the yokai hold him down, and he starts doubting his powers and decides to go help out. Before that happens, Tora urges him to let Ushio cook, and by doing this, Nagare witnesses Ushio destroy over 200 small yokai with just a single thrust of the beast spear's lightning powers, which ultimately blows up what's left of the bus. In the aftermath of the attack, Ushio hitches a ride on Nagare's bike to continue the rest of his journey. However, on the way there, he suddenly remembers the horrible state the bus passengers from earlier were in right after he saved them, and he starts feeling guilty. Before long, about 5 leathered bikers catch up to Nagare's bike and chase him till he stops, all just to interrogate him. Amongst the leather bikers is June, the younger sister of the strongest candidate from the Kohame sect, Moritsuna. She tells Nagare that Moritsuna disappeared 2 weeks ago after he found out that Ushio is being observed as the wielder of the beast spear, and then asks if he's seen him since then. Just as Nagare denies ever seeing him, Moritsuna shows up with a summoned Haruko monster, captures Ushio, and manipulates the Haruko yokai to suck out Ushio's life force. Because Moritsuna is usually a very chill and collected person, this absurd behavior doesn't sit right with Nagare and Jun at all. Nagare tries to stop him physically, but when that doesn't work, Tora rescues Ushio from the Haruko and has him finish it off, so he can face Moritsuna. However, as his fight with Moritsuna is about to begin, Jun speaks to Moritsuna to help him remember who he is, and suddenly, the yokai monsters lodged in his olfactory lobe, controlling him, run into some syntax errors. To avoid losing full control of Moritsuna mid-fight, the yokai monsters in Moritsuna's brain force him to retreat to a lake and work him up to regain control. In the meantime, Ushio gets himself in front of a mirror and calls Elder Unga, the mirror yokai back in the Kamitachi forest, to connect his mirror to the forest yokai leader in Tono so he can ask him for the remedy to Morisuna's mind control. Once the connection is made, Ushio discusses the issue with the forest yokai leader, but the leader tells him that he can only save Moritsuna by risking his entire humanity and shrinking into a microscopic version of himself with the beast spear so he can infiltrate Moritsuna's physical brain and destroy the yokai monsters from within. That being said, the yokai leader then mentions the risks associated with this procedure, which is that Ushio could turn into a monstrous yokai, but Ushio remains unfazed and just ends the meeting. Later that night, Ushio learns about an incident that happened between Jun and her older brother back when they were younger. Long story short, Moritsuna was born strong, so he saved his sister from a horrible yokai one day, but even after that, Jun didn't thank him because his face was too scary, and she's been regretting that ever since. While they continue yapping, Moritsuna suddenly appears again, but this time around, he attacks even harder and gets much weaker each time Jun calls his name. After enduring so much suffering from Jun's words, the yokai in Moritsuna's head try to force Moritsuna into unaliving his own sister. Thankfully, before that happens, Ushio slaps the knife away from him, and Moritsuna finally gets back to his senses. However, to avoid transforming into that kind of monster ever again, he falls off the cliff to end his life. Feeling sorry for the poor guy, Ushio catches Moritsuna just before he hits the ground and brings his unconscious body back up. While Jun and the others check up on him, he tells Nagare that he's willing to risk turning into a beast just to save Moritsuna. Nagare tries to stop at first, but when he sees Ushio's extreme willingness to do anything for the hose, he eventually lets him do his thing. After the meeting, Elder Unga appears on a bike's side view mirror, chastises Ushio a little for going through with this, and sends him a green, ugly Pokemon yokai named Izuna to guide him. Upon his arrival, Izuna acts like a control freak, thinking he's him, but Ushio ignores him, shrinks himself, Tora, and Izuna, and infiltrates Moritsuna's body from his fingertips. However, the moment they get inside, a small army of Hakumen's yokai attacks them, and Ushio and his buddies easily fight them off. Not long after, another yokai ties them down with Moritsuna's blood vessels, and Ushio and his buddies wiggle around to free themselves. While they're at it, Moritsuna's physical body shakes vigorously in the real world, so Nagare and the others hold him down as hard as they can to protect him. Meanwhile, Ushio controls the beast spear hands-free and stabs the yokai, tying them up in the head. Then, he exercises it and suddenly starts growing weird, leech-like parasites on his body. Seeing this, Ushio realizes that he's slowly losing his humanity to become a beast, but even still, he refuses to abort his mission. Within the next few minutes, the trio gets to Moritsuna's vertebral column and runs up the spine to get to the brain. Around his neck area, they meet a disgustingly large number of monsters swarming there, but the moment these yokai monsters spot Ushio, they force Moritsuna to stand upright and make him keep everyone off his body. Refusing to let her bro go, Jun latches herself to Moritsuna and subconsciously sends some power into his body. The moment Ushio notices Jun's power entering Moritsuna's body, he goes berserk and exorcises all the yokai swarming that area. Not long after, the parasites on his body grow even bigger, and the overall boss of the yokai in control of Moritsuna's body, Chiba, shows up to say hi. Ushio immediately runs up to him to fight him, but after seeing how strong this guy is, he stops fighting and asks Chiba to tell him what Hakumen's true plan actually is. By this time, Chiba conjures a hologram of his boss, and Ushio sees Hakumen wishing for the death of all things living, human and yokai alike. After, his entire body goes stiff, and with Ushio unable to move, Chiba lunges at him to finish him off. Just as he's about to stab him, Izuna surprisingly gets in the way and takes the hit for Ushio. Ushio is devastated as Izuna tells him to clear his browser history, since he might not make it, but right before he dies, Chiba attacks again, and Ushio retaliates to keep him busy. Before long, Tora joins them, and while Ushio fights Chiba, Izuna urges him to tell Jun to concentrate her will and send her power into Moritsuna's body through his eyes. After relaying the message, Tora and Ushio work on luring Chiba to Moritsuna's eyes, while Jun exposes her bare self and focuses her gaze on Moritsuna's eyes. Once they get to the eyes, Chiba figures out their plan and tries to return to the brain. Just then, Izuna shows up, ready to sacrifice himself, and pushes him back into Jun's gaze. When Ushio realizes that Izuna is about to sacrifice himself, he draws more power from the beast spear, drags Izuna from Chiba, and stabs Chiba with the beast spear just as Jun's power hits him. Within seconds, Chiba dies, and Tora grabs Ushio and Izuna out of the danger path. Shortly afterward, Moritsuna regains his senses and wakes up with a smile. However, when he finds out how far Ushio went to save him, he realizes how worthless he is and starts crying. Through one of his teardrops, Ushio, Izuna, and Tora return to the real world, and Nagare nearly busts a load of happiness when he spots Ushio. Unfortunately, just when they all thought they were out of the woods, Ushio suddenly loses all his humanity and transforms into a monstrous yokai beast. Meanwhile, a mystical Chinese female ghost, recognized as Mei or the Founder, appears to Oyakume and her fellow elders back in the Kohame headquarters and updates them on Ushio's condition. Naturally, saving him should be impossible, but Mei tells Oyakume that Ushio might survive if they can make the girls in his life comb his long hair, with the comb his mother passed down to him, and Oyakume agrees to help out. That said, Mei leaves to go discuss with the girls in Ushio's life, and Iwaikume summons the strongest mystic they have, Shigure, to go save Ushio in Hokkaido. The following day, Mei meets with Yu, Saya, Reiko, Asako, and Mayuko in their respective houses and explains the urgency of Ushio's situation to them. Afterward, she tells them about the comb Ushio always carries as a memento of his mother, and adds that if they want to save him, they all need to use that specific comb to pull out some locks from his long samurai hair. Hearing this, the 5 girls all agree to help, but despite being pissed that Ushio never shared his secret life with her, Asako keeps calm and boards a plane to Asaikawa with the other girls. Hours later, while Ushio makes his way to Asaikawa, all 5 girls arrive at the Asaikawa airport and ride with Shigure in a private chopper to get to Ushio's location ASAP. By that time, Nagare, Jun, and Moritsuna find out from Hinoa that Ushio is currently heading towards a forbidden cave in Asaikawa. Unless he's the true bearer of the spear who can end everything, if Ushio enters that cave, then there's a high chance that he won't come out alive. As Jun and the others digest this, Ushio's subconscious self is seen struggling to regain total control of his body, as the beast spear forcibly overtakes his motor functions. While he continues running to a place he calls Kamui Kotan, Hakumen mobilizes every single yokai in his army to chase after Ushio to destroy him and the beast spear. Moments before the chaos begins, Ushio's subconscious self spots an angry blacksmith inside his body, bleeding all over as he forges the beast spear and breathes fire from his mouth. As he observes the madman's work, Shigure gathers everybody, the 5 girls, Hinoa, Jun, Nagare, Moritsuna, and a few other bikers, and updates them on specifics of their mission. Before long, they spot Hakumen's yokai army flying towards Ushio's direction. Shigure orders Hinoa and Jun to stay and protect the girls, while Tora and Izuna track Ushio and retrieve the comb from him. Once that's settled, he gives the girls one last pep talk, and then leaves with Moritsuna, Nagare, and the other bikers to cast a 4-directional barrier around the mountain to keep the yokai army out. Shortly afterward, Tora and Izuna recover Sumako's comb from Ushio's pockets and lure him towards the 5 girls' direction. As Shigure and the other mystics cast the barrier, Tora and Izuna approach the girls and give Reiko Sumako's comb, which she eventually uses to comb out a few locks of his long hair. Following this, Ushio injures Asako as he runs into the other girls up front and continues running toward Asahikawa. However, before he gets far, Hinoa traps him in a very potent green barrier and tells whoever's next to quickly comb his hair before Ushio escapes. As a white-haired woman, Saya collects the comb from Reiko, forces herself through Hinoa's dangerous barrier, and combs out another small lock from his hair. At this point, Ushio gets irritated, so he breaks himself out of Hinoa's barrier and goes after the comb, which is now in Mayuko's hands. Fortunately for Mayuko, just as he's about to reach her, Tora strikes the beastified Ushio with some lightning and gets both Mayuko and Saya out of Ushio's sight. With his targets gone, Ushio shifts his sights to Hinoa, who's now out of power, and charges at her to finish her off. Sensing the danger, Jun quickly traps him in another barrier, saving Hinoa, and then passes on the comb to Yu. Soon after, Yu races over the frail bridge, combs out another lock from Ushio's hair, and, while Ushio retreats into the woods, passes on the comb to Mayuko. Moments later, as they try to figure out where Ushio went, Mei pops up and leads them all to the cave where Ushio's likely to be. On their way there, Tora asks her why the beast spear is so drawn to that cave, and Mei tells him that it's because there's a piece of Hakumen no Mono's body, which is the spear's greatest enemy, in there. Within a few minutes, they get to the cave's entrance, and Mayuko rushes forward to fulfill her part of the deal. Just then, Ushio shows up, looking haggard and pathetic, and attacks Mayuko without any discretion. Mayuko blocks his attack with the comb's power, but the recoil from the attack pushes her off the cliff nearby. Fortunately, as she's about to fall off and die, Tora carries her and takes her back to Ushio to bait him into confronting them. By the time Shigure, Moritsuna, and the others all run out of chi to keep their 4-directional barrier up, Ushio takes Tora's bait and stabs him in the chest with the beast's spear. Now that Ushio's close to him, Tora grabs him, pulls him closer to himself, and Mayuko trash talks the pathetic weakling inside Ushio and buys Mayuko enough time to comb out another lock from his hair. After doing just that, Mayuko gives Asako the comb to do her part, but before she even gets close to Ushio, Hakumen's yokai army charges towards them. Luckily, just as they're about to get to the beast's spear, he who shows up out of nowhere casts a barrier surrounding that patch of land with his talismans and buys Asako 3 more minutes to get the job done. Within this time, Ushio regains a small part of himself and complains about the pain he feels to Asako. Feeling sorry for the poor guy, Asako bawls her eyes out, insults him even more, and eventually combs out another lock of his hair. At this point, the beast spear desperately tries to get Ushio inside that cave as it slowly loses control over him, but Asako risks everything and pushes Ushio off the cliff. Fortunately, as they're about to hit the ground, Ushio finally regains all motor functions in his body and gets both of them back to the surface in one piece. Seconds later, when the yokai monsters break through Hugh's barrier, Ushio and Tora go on a murder frenzy and destroy every single yokai monster in Hakumen's army just with a single lightning strike. In the aftermath of the attack, Ushio gets tired from the exhaustion, but while the girls gather around him, he starts glazing them really hard in the hopes that they'll let him hit one day. After his yap session, Ushio and Tora walk into the cave to find out more about Hakumen's history, while Asako and the girls return home to party. After an hour of trekking, Ushio and Tora find a weird temple right in the middle of the cave system. As they pause to observe the place, the beast's spear suddenly reverberates violently, so Ushio transforms into his samurai mode and walks in carefully with Tora. Soon, they enter a weird room decorated with hundreds of lit candles and spot the largest fragment of Hakumen's body lodged inside the wall. Thinking the body fragment was dead, Ushio gets close to it to observe it. However, when the fragment attacks him, he nearly pisses himself out of raw fear. Seconds later, an off-brand Smeagol monster named Tokisaka pops out of a portal in the middle of the room, introduces himself as a monster who travels through time, and decides to take Ushio and Tora back to a time before the beast's spear was made, which is about 2,000 years ago. However, before doing that, Tokisaka tells the duo how Hakumen's body fragments were scattered across Japan, and also adds how yokai tracked down and destroyed the fragments, only to leave the largest one in that cave. When Ushio asks why the humans and yokai didn't destroy Hakumen's main body, Tokisaka says it was because they lacked the beast's spear, which is the only weapon strong enough to slay the monster. After searching for the spear for ages, with no luck in finding it, Tokisaka says a particular human named Yuki, who claimed to be Mei's reincarnation, cast the barrier to keep watch on Hakumen no Mono for some unknown reason. At this point in the narration, Ushio's brain runs out of RAM to process all that information, so to help them understand the story even more, Tokisaka teleports them to the capital of China 2,000 years ago, and leaves them there to experience the whole thing themselves. Not long after they arrive, a girl looking exactly like Mayuko shows up and expresses how glad she is that Ushio isn't a yokai, especially after seeing him drop out of nowhere. To avoid exposing himself, Ushio quickly gets acquainted with the girl, who calls herself Ji-Mei, while Tora, who is currently invisible to Mei, nearly cringes from the smell of the strong evil miasma filling the palace. Just then, a few yokai monsters pop out of the ground and attack them, but when Ushio and Tora easily take them down, Mei drags Ushio to her house to thank him properly for saving her. Moments later, after getting Ushio a change of clothes, Mei's mother tells him a little bit of history about this dangerous beast. As it turns out, Hakumen no Mono infiltrated the current king's palace disguised as a concubine, all just to drive him mad. When the king found out, he ordered the execution of about 80 of his hoes, and ultimately decided to create a holy sword strong enough to defeat the monster. To do this, he called forth every blacksmith in the capital and promised immense wealth to whoever was able to forge a holy sword strong enough to destroy the monster hiding in his palace. Ever since that decree was passed, Mei says her father's been working day and night to forge such a sword, but still with no luck. By nightfall, Mei's father returns from his shop and has a nice little chat with his family and Ushio. Before long, Mei's older brother, Jiryu, whom Ushio recognizes as the Mad Man forging the beast spear in his subconscious, returns from one of his sword forging classes and tells his father that Hakumen no Mono's already infiltrated their kingdom. Hearing this, Mei's father immediately returns to the shop and works all night alongside Giryu to try forging another holy sword, but unfortunately, when morning comes, he fails again. Just as he's about to give up, Jiryu tells his father about a dark art he learned from one of his classes. If he's right, then mixing a woman's hair with the metal being used to forge the holy sword should give the sword enough durability to withstand piercing through Hakumen's skin. With this in mind, the father collects some strands of hair from his wife and works tirelessly for 4 days till they finally manage to forge a decent holy sword. Soon after, they, alongside several other blacksmiths, gather in the palace to present their swords to the king. However, before the presentation begins, Hakumen no Mono, who is still disguised as a concubine, reveals his true identity and slaughters every single blacksmith in the palace, including Mei and Jiryu's parents. Following this, he rushes toward Jiryu and Mei to finish them off, but Ushio steps in between them to face him. However, the moment Hakumen locks eyes with him, Ushio's body freezes stiff as he trembles under the beast's overwhelming presence. With Ushio unable to move, Hakumen shoots a beam of plasma at him to take him out, but when Tora blocks it, he flies out of the palace, bombs all the houses in the capital, and escapes. years. Following the unfortunate tragedy, Ushio returns to Mei and Giryu's house and mourns the loss of their parents. By nightfall, he finds Giryu bleeding profusely as he punches a lump of iron ore in his father's workshop, and realizes that Giryu is handling his survivor's guilt. However, since Giryu is still fated to create the beast spear, Ushio stops him from breaking his precious hands and assures him that everything will be okay. Thankfully, Giryu believes him, but right after he calms down, he tells Ushio that there's one other way to forge a holy sword that might work, and that's by using dark magic. However, to do this, Giryu tells Ushio that he'd have to sacrifice someone close to him and merge them with the molten metal in the furnace, so he can forge a sword with their spirit living inside. Since he's already lost 2 of his family members, Giryu's not really sure he's ready to lose anybody again. Just then, Mei, who happens to have been eavesdropping on his conversation, shows up, says her goodbyes to her brother and Ushio, and falls into the furnace to mix with the molten metal. Ushio and Giryu do their best to catch Mei before she sacrifices herself, but unfortunately, it's already too late as Mei is gone. Enraged by his sister's sacrifice, Giryu curses himself to become an Oni and spends the rest of the night forging the beast's spear. Around this time, Ushio tries helping him, but Tora advises that he just leave Giryu be and watch over him till the end. Hours later, as Giryu finishes the forge, he merges his spirit into the beast's spear, becoming one with it, and entrusts it to the Otsuki bloodline, which is Ushio's family name. After that, it flies away to hunt Hakumen no Mono and leaves Ushio behind. While Ushio contemplates his next move, Mei's spirit pops up alongside Tokisaka and takes Ushio and Tora through the next 1,000 years to help them understand the rest of the story. Apparently, after hunting Hakumen for centuries and failing to capture him, the beast spear got irritated and started destroying yokai indiscriminately everywhere it went. Along the line, the yokai of China came together to bind it, and after a long and bloody battle, they were only able to capture it by turning a good bunch of themselves into red fabric and wrapping the handle to seal it. Meanwhile, Mei says she pursued Hakumen, hoping to destroy it before her brother's spirit dies along with it. However, when she found out that Hakumen had already crossed to Japan, she reincarnated herself as a Japanese person named Yuki and lived for a few decades as a human till she encountered Hakumen no Mono again. After the great war between the monster and the humans, Mei tracked Hakumen down to its resting place and found him fusing himself into the tectonic plates holding Japan afloat. If, peradventure, the yokai army from Japan gets to the place and forcefully rips Hakumen out of his resting place, then Japan's tectonic plates will shift and the whole country will sink into the sea. To prevent this from happening, Mei made Yuki cast the powerful barrier to keep the yokai army away from Hakumen, but since the yokai of that time were dumber than dodo birds, they hated her for it. For years, Mei kept the barrier up using Yuki, but when Yuki's strength started to fail her, Mei reincarnated herself again as Hizaki Mikado and continued holding the barrier up. 300 years later, Mikado got old, and so Mei shifted to the person next in line, Sumako Hizaki, who later became Sumako Aotsuki. At this point in the story, Tora asks Mei how Ushio was born if Sumako spent most of her life under the sea keeping the barrier up, and Mei tells them that it all began one day, when Sumako dreamt of marrying a beautiful man and giving birth to a strong boy, who eventually grew to become the wielder of the beast's spear. Hearing this, Mei saw potential in this dream, so, after finding out the name of the boy to be Ushio, she sent Sumako to the mortal world for 2 years, and the rest became history. With the story coming to an end, Tokisaka and Mei encourage Ushio not to lose heart, especially now that there's no turning back, and disappear into the spirit realm to continue chilling. Around that same time, a Shrek wannabe yokai monster spots a mysterious goth girl searching his spiritual crib for the beast's spear and attacks her. Unfazed, the goth girl slaughters him, but while she's at it, she reveals herself as an entity much stronger than the beast's spear, and then leaves once she's done. The following day, Ushio returns to school and enjoys another normal day without monsters or mysterious sightings. However, on his way back from school, he saves a young, attention-seeking loser named Kiryu from Truck Kun, and soon finds out that the guy actually knows him. To avoid adding to his problems, Ushio just ignores the dude. However, when he gets back home, he asks Tora if he noticed anything weird about Kiryu, and Tora tells him that he sensed a weapon similar to the beast's spear called the Elzar scythe in his backpack. Curious, Ushio thinks hard to figure out who the guy could be, but just then, Kiryu suddenly shows up with his pet bug yokai, Quinn, and starts claiming to be the true inheritor of the beast's spear. Later that night, Oyakume meets with Shigure at the Kohame Sect Temple and pesters him to bring Ushio to her so she can at least see him once before she dies. Hearing this, Nijira and Shigure try to discourage her from being pessimistic, but just then, a living piece of Hakumen's body, manifested as a separate yokai, appears in the headquarters night sky and attacks the temple. At first, Shigure and the other mystics stand their ground, But the moment the yokai monster starts whooping their butts, Shigure flies back to his house, wounded, and carries Ushio and Kiryu back to the battlefield to help them out. Moments later, as Shigure and his son arrive at the temple, Nijira and the mystics immobilize the yokai monster with the full moon formation so that Shigure can get Ushio inside to see Oyakume. Without wasting any time, Shigure leads Ushio to Oyakume's chambers and leaves him there with the old woman to meet her. After the niceties, Ushio and Oyakume chat like old buddies, and Oyakume gets to remember how beautiful her life was before she was forced into slavery as the barrier keeper. As their conversation comes to an end, the building trembles, and Ushio gets up and leaves to help the others outside. As the Hakumen yokai slowly breaks the barrier keeping it down, Kiryu has Kyuin keep Tora busy so he can destroy the monster and get all the glory. However, before he gets his time in the limelight, Ushio shows up to attack the yokai, but the monster blows him away and continues attacking everybody. However, just as it's about to slaughter Ushio, Oyakume shows up and casts a very potent barrier to block the monster. Seeing this, the monster starts trash-talking the old woman, but when Oyakume exposes herself to be the infamous Mikado Hizaki, the monster realizes that it's cooked. Even still, it attacks Oyakume's barrier, thinking her frail body would fail her. But eventually, Oyakume petrifies it with every last bit of strength in her body. In the aftermath of the fight, Oyakume collapses, but while Ushio runs up to check on her, Kiryu moves forward and destroys the already petrified monster, so that everyone would think he's the one who dealt the final blow. Soon after, Oyakume dies from overusing her powers, but Kiryu, who couldn't care less, meets Shigure and Nijira and condemns Ushio's competence as the wielder of the beast spear. When Shigure tries to scold him for being rude, Nijira stops him and instead takes Kiryu in for questioning. A few days later, Shigure meets with Nijira to discuss the nuisance that the annoying twerp Kiryu is causing to their sect. As it turns out, ever since Kiryu dealt the finishing blow, he's managed to convince a couple of brain-dead monks in the temple that the beast spear is now useless and that his Elzar scythe is the only thing that can slay Hakumen no Mono. When Nijira hears this, he expresses his disappointment and urges Shigure to try nipping this problem in the bud before Kiryu ends up causing an internal conflict. Unfortunately, by the time Shigure gets to work, Kiryu shows up at Ushio's house with a small army of 10 monks and traps him in a barrier to forcefully collect the beast spear from him. While Kiryu reveals his true plan to destroy the beast spear, Ushio breaks free of the barrier and beats up the monks. Unfortunately, before he gets to escape, Kiryu brings out a few yards of the red spiritual yokai fabric, binds the spear to it, forcefully collects the beast spear from Ushio, and then leaves. Later that night, Tora meets Nagare on the road as Nagare drives to Ushio's place to warn him about Kiryu, and the duo have a nice chat about Tora's likeness to Ushio. However, when they get to Ushio's house and see the aftermath of Kiryu's fight, Nagare instantly figures out where Kiryu might go next, so he gets back on his bike and starts riding there. Back in the Kohame sect temple, Nijira and a few other elders host a meeting to try talking some sense into some of the young monks, when suddenly, Ushio shows up and reports Kiryu's crime. Upon hearing everything Kiryu did, Nijira calls Ushio aside and tells him all about Kiryu's origin story. It all started 16 years ago with a man named Inasa, who not only became a high-level master, but also raised Kiryu. During a period when nobody could wield the beast spear, Inasa, as a master researcher into sacred fighting implements, was tasked to create an implement to support the beast spear, and he accepted. Unfortunately, as time passed, he went mad, left the temple, and began practicing dark magic in silence, all just to create a weapon that surpasses the beast spear. Then, 2 years ago, the haggard man returned to the temple with a strange scythe and young Kiryu. Seeing how powerful the scythe is, the elders foolishly made Kiryu a candidate for the beast spear, only to ultimately realize that Kiryu's just a power-hungry attention seeker. Now that they've recognized their foolishness, Nijira begs Ushio to get the beast spear before Kiryu destroys it, and Ushio obliges. Elsewhere, Nagare and Tora arrive at the House of Whisperers, which is where Kiryu was born and raised, and explore the creepy place for any clues of the brat's presence. Before long, they run into disgusting, chimeric monsters looking to devour humans and fight through them to get to Kiryu's hiding place. A few minutes later, as Hinoa and Ushio arrive at the creepy house, Nagare and Tora find an armory filled with fake Elzar scythes and pause to wonder why Kiryu's the only one carrying the special scythe. As they keep exploring the armory, Nagare spots a small crack in a part of the wall, which leads to a secret room and has Tora force it open for him. Inside, they find Inasa's demonic corpse sitting on a chair and soon get attacked by a hidden golem. At the same time, Ushio and Hinoa find Inasa's scattered diary and learn that he created Kuin through dangerous experiments, but still needed help to finish the scythe and a thing he called materia. Eventually, Tawako, the weird goth girl from earlier, appeared and helped him forge the first Elzar scythe using dark magic. After, she admits she wants the beast spear destroyed and tells Inasa how to permanently seal it by binding it with the red fabric, and then burying it in concrete, fused molten lead, and mercury. Realizing the danger, Hinowa and Ushio quickly reunite with Nagare and Tora and fight the monster guarding Kiryo's secret room. Amid the hubbub, Ushio learns the final truth from the diary. Kiryo was artificially created by Tawako as the ultimate materia to wield the Elzar scythe. This news comes as a shock to him, but since he's already running out of time, he leaves Hinowa and Nagare and runs to the East Hall to stop Kiryo. Around that same time, Kiryo spots him coming. So to buy himself more time, he sends Kuin to meet them outside and keep him busy. Soon after, Kuin faces Tora and Ushio and rajabates them for being such weak and powerless fools. Irritated, Ushio and Tora try to beat the annoying Chimera, but Kuin stabs Tora all over his body with his underground spikes and pins him down. At this point, Tora considers just accepting defeat, but when the ugly bug insults and rageabates him even further, he gets fed up and decides to fight back. Within seconds, he breaks Quin's spikes, trash talks Quin's pathetic master, Kiryo, and keeps him busy while Ushio moves on to get to Kiryo. Once inside the East Hall, Ushio spots Kiryo and his army of loser monks all holding Elzar scythes as the beast spear hangs over the large concrete box and tries attacking them, but Kiryo knocks him down. After, he focuses his gaze on his mother, who happens to be the deranged Tawako, and listens to her play a dark song for the spear. Once she's done, she releases the beast spear into the molten concrete, and Ushio, who recognizes her from Anasa's diary, jumps after the spear, only to realize that it's already too late. Before long, the monks following Kiryo ask him about this gothic baddie he never told them about. However, as Kiryo starts cooking up lies to manipulate them even further, Shigure pops out of nowhere and tells them all that Tawako's a servant of Hakumen, who's been working behind the scenes, manipulating events, all just to deceive the dumb humans into destroying the beast spear themselves. As expected, nobody believes him at first, but when Shigure physically exposes her as Hakumen's lapdog, Kiryo and his pack of foolish simps freeze stiff in shock. With nothing left to hide, Tawako smacks Kiryo in the head for being such a good boy, throws Ushio into the box of concrete when he tries to summon the spear, and goes on a murder spree. However, just as Ushio's about to accept defeat, Jiryu's spirit suddenly appears to him from the world of the dead and gives him the chance to sacrifice a small part of his soul to get the beast spear back. Ushio considers all the risks involved with taking this decision, but when he realizes just how much stronger he'll be with the beast spear, he sells his soul and eventually gets the beast spear back from the concrete box. Irritated, Tawako tries attacking him, but after Ushio defends against her attacks, she summons her golem forward and has it hold Nagare and Hinowa hostage. At the time, Hinowa and Nagare were pretty weak from their previous fights, so Tawako bargains their lives for the spear. As Ushio considers taking the deal, Nagare and Hinowa recite a self-destruct technique and tell Ushio how to defeat the golem. Refusing to let them die, Ushio baits Tawako into shooting a beam of fire at him, and when she does, he blocks it, destroys the golem, and saves Nagare and Hinowa. Upon realizing how powerless she is against the beast spear, Tawako crawls towards Kiryo, apologizes for her language earlier, and shamelessly asks him to help save her from Ushio. As the scared, delusional little brat that he is, Kiryo believes Tawako and attacks Ushio violently. However, when Tawako tries to escape the hall and fails, she betrays Kiryo's trust again and tries to murder everyone in the hall, including Shigure. By this time, Kiryo gets fed up, so before Tawako destroys everybody, he stabs her in the back with the scythe and watches her burn to ashes. After, the poor guy runs mad, but Ushio slaps some sense into his immature brain and tells him to grow the F up. Seconds later, when Kiryo slowly starts to see Ushio's truth, he gets up and leaves to find his way. A few days later, Ushio eats one too many burritos from Taco Bell and turns his toilet into a crime scene. As the toxic gases fill the house, Tora flies out for his own safety and decides to visit Mayuko so Ushio can learn his lesson on his own. Moments later, when he arrives at Mayuko's house, he finds her checking her mail and learns that she's been invited to a dinner party at an odd company. Although Mayuko wants to go, Tora smells the invitation letter, realizes it stinks of a monster, and suspects that this company might consist of monsters trying to lure Mayuko into a vulnerable state just so they can eat her brain. Knowing this, Tora calls Mayuko and suggests that she just visit Ushio's place so she can stop being his side chick, but Mayuko just ignores him and leaves. With time running out, Tora quickly shapeshifts to take Mayuko's form and follows her to a big, bluish building. As he searches for her, the real Mayuko rides the elevator up to a large, empty hall with two sus dudes sitting towards the window area and sits before them to attend the party. Soon after, they ask her a very tough question, but when Mayuko starts stuttering, one of the sus guys, an ugly old dude named Nadoka, inches closer to her and sticks out his smelly appendage, ready to suck out her brain. Fortunately, before that happens, Tora disrupts their interview, and Nodoka and his partner, Taira, move on to tell them about their origins. After establishing the fact that they're special yokai that have lived in graveyards and battlefields for centuries, the duo tells Tora that they're only seeking to find the reason why humans face death differently. Since Tora doesn't care, he slams both of them into the walls, saving Mayuko, and carries her down to a bridal boutique to chill before they leave. Before long, Mayuko finds a wedding dress and puts it on, but as she tries to teach Tora how modern marriages are done, Nodoka and Taira show up in their natural, ugly forms and attack them again. This time, Tora tries defending against these attacks, but when he sees how strong they are, he retreats to a lower floor and hides in a chest with Mayuko. Within seconds, Nodoka and Taira track them to the chest and order them to reveal themselves. Just then, Tora shapeshifts into Mayuko to confuse the enemy and runs out with the real Mayuko in opposite directions. Seeing this, the monsters split up and chase both Mayukos. While Taira gets slapped by Tora, the real Mayuko gets trapped in a tunnel by Nodoka. However, just as he's about to eat her brain, Taira falls from the upper floor, petrified, and Tora vaporizes him with his lightning. Following the resulting explosion, a bystander hangs off the ledge created by Tora's lightning, but instead of abandoning him, Mayuko, alongside a few other bystanders, helps him up. However, the moment she lets her guard down, Nodoka grabs her with his tongue and holds her down. Refusing to become the victim, Mayuko falls off the tunnel and plunges to her death, dragging Nodoka along with her. Fortunately for her, before they hit the ground, Tora slaughters Nodoka midair, catches her unconscious body, and takes her home. The following morning, while Asako and Ushio walk to school together, three mysterious scientists stalk, observe, and analyze them and the concealed beast spear from their hidden van. After getting enough information on their physicals, they send in a small army of men in black to capture them. But Ushio puts up a really good fight, especially when the men start manhandling his main chick. As he fights off the men, the three scientists nearly bust a load of happiness as they realize how severely they underestimated him. Eventually, when Asako escapes their enclosure, the attackers immobilize Ushio with tranquilizer darts and capture him easily. In the meantime, Atsuzawa meets with Shigure and reports that Hammer Institute, a scientific research organization responsible for studying and creating weapons to fight Hakumen no Mano, has gone rogue. As Shigure digests this, Tora shows up just as Asako is about to be kidnapped and saves her. As for Ushio, he wakes up inside the scientist's bus and finds the three creeps standing over his stretcher. When he demands to know who they are, they tell him that they're heartless scientists from Hammer Institute, tasked with analyzing yokai and creating a weapon to defeat Hakumen. Following this, they yap about the high potential of the beast's spear as a formidable weapon against Hakumen. But while they're at it, they spot Tora talking to Asako and decide to try out their latest invention, the Kirlian oscillator. Within the next few minutes, they get the oscillators within range and fire several sonic booms that alter Tora's spiritual energy field to keep him immobilized. In less than a minute, Tora passes out, and the scientists have their men haul both him and Asako to their facility. Hours later, when they get to the facility, Tora secretly causes an explosion with a hair strand to distract the workers and creates a clone of Asako with a few locks of his hair. Then, he cuts off the real Asako's binding ropes and has her hide under the truck while they wheel him away. Apparently, the plan is to make sure the real Asako finds Ushio's ward within the little time she has and stretch Tora's hair strand that's with her whenever she finds him, to summon him. After exploring the facility for a few minutes, Asako runs into a monster prison and meets a very kind European monster boy named Ball and gets a bit friendly with him. However, when she finds out the true nature of that facility, she becomes very pissed and walks him out of his cage. Before long, one of the scientist's test subjects becomes unstable in the pilot testing tube, so it grows into a Hakumen servant and attacks Asako and Ball. To protect his new friend, Ball holds the monster down, but unfortunately, the monster absorbs him into its body and heads straight for the beast's spear. When Asako finally manages to track Ushio's location down, she condemns the scientists for doing such inhumane things to yokai monsters. However, the moment the Hakumen monster shows up to murder the three scientists, Ushio still protects them with the power of the beast's spear, like the pathetic fool that he is. Sensing the danger, the Hakumen specimen unleashes the powers of all the yokai it's absorbed before and attacks Ushio. Ushio dodges all the specimen's attacks, but as he's about to begin his counterattack, Asako begs him not to destroy the monster because Bal is still attached to it. With this, Ushio continues fighting the monster carefully, while Asako pesters the scientists to find a way to save Bal. Not long after, Ushio crashes into the wall and causes Asako to be buried under some rubble. Just as she's about to pass out, she suddenly remembers Tora's hair and quickly summons him. In no time, Tora shows up in the same room as them, immobilizes the Hakumen monster, and saves Ushio and the rest. As he continues keeping the monster busy, the scientists notice a toxic gas leak from the walls and instantly start making plans to evacuate to the surface facility. Seeing this, Asako and Ushio ask about their plans for evacuating the injured, but when the selfish scumbags tell them that they'll blow it up regardless of who gets left behind. Ushio and Asako snap and condemn them for being walking failures. Around this time, Tora manages to immobilize the Hakumen monster by crippling its legs, but unfortunately, just when he thought he'd won, the monster regrows legs from the yokai it previously absorbed and charges at him. Refusing to sit by and do nothing, Ushio jumps into battle and fights Hakumen, while Helena, the female scientist, tells Asako of a way to stop Hakumen. Since its legs consist of previously absorbed yokai, Helena tells Asako that they might be able to immobilize the monster using the Kirlian oscillator. The only issue now is that moving into the operation room to use the oscillator is practically self-sacrifice, so Helena asks Asako again if she's ready to die for her friends, and she says yes. Hearing this, Helena leads her to the operation room, ignoring the babblings of the spineless cowards she has as partners, not knowing that Shigure and Atsuzawa were already on their way, armed and prepared to shut Hammer down. While the battle rages on, Hakumen's servant evolves to use Bal as bait to slow them down and prevent them from cutting its legs off. Irritated, Tora makes the mistake of shooting lightning at it, but the monster absorbs all the lightning and somehow manages to slash Helena's back with its tentacles. Asako gets very sad for her, but Helena takes heart and instructs her on the next two procedures to activate the oscillator. The moment the oscillator comes online, Asako fires it at the monster and holds it down. Within the next few seconds, Ushio and Tora detach Bal from the Hakumen servant and beat the F out of the monster, even after the oscillators go offline. Over time, they manage to blast the monster apart, but just when they think they're out of the woods, the monster's fragment slowly regenerates itself. Seeing this, Helena phones her partner and instructs them to blow up that section of the facility in 10 minutes so that the monster can be destroyed along with it. Once the self-destruct sequence is activated, Asako tries to get Helena out to safety with her, but unfortunately, Helena's huge back wound makes that impossible. Plus, Helena's already tired of the loneliness she's been enduring ever since her only son died, so before letting Asako go, she gives her some life advice and wishes her well. With nothing left to lose, Asako runs up to Ushio, Bal, and Tora and collapses shortly after because of the poison gas. At this point, Tora carries their unconscious body to the surface as the countdown continues. In her final moments, Helena ensures she sends her partners all the data they need to create the anti-Hakumen weapon, and then waits for her demise. As the timer hits 0, Shigure and Atsuzawa arrest the other two scientists, and the entire facility explodes. Thankfully, Tora manages to get Ushio, Asako, and Bal out in one piece, but immediately, they regain consciousness, and Asako and Ushio continue fighting again. A few days after the tragedy, life returns to normal for Ushio, Tora, Asako, and Mayuko, and although the Hakumen no Mono threat remains, Shigure urges the young adults to enjoy whatever peace they have left. That brings us to the end of the video. What do you think happens next for Ushio? Do you think he now has what it takes to defeat Hakumen no Mono? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more anime recaps like these, watch this video instead.